Hello beautiful people, this is Being Human and I am Pip Waller, talking about various aspects to do with holistic approaches to health and healing and well-being and life in general. So I want to talk about this thing called long COVID today, which probably everyone's heard of, and you'll please bear with me, it's going to be a bit of a long video, and also I've made notes, so I'm going to refer to them. So and I will make sure that those notes are published somewhere that you can see. So basically long COVID, it's a form of post-viral fatigue and illness, not always just fatigue and other symptoms. And it's widely reported on social media and mainstream media, which is quite interesting because any other long-term fatigue or post-viral issues or fatigues have basically been more or less invisible. So it's quite historic, the first time that there's been a lot of, I'm going to say, like encouraging or positive publicity about post-viral fatigue, because although there has been a certain amount of things over the years about ME, it used to be called the yuppie flu, you might remember that if you're old enough, and it was quite disparaging, really. What little bit of publicity there has been quite disparaging. But long COVID is really massively, I'm going to say it's touted, I'm going to go so far as to say it's touted as a reason why you must get vaccinated and be terrified of COVID. So and also why younger people should be terrified of COVID, because of course younger people can get long COVID, post-viral fatigue, just as many thousands of people in the world who've had a chronic fatigue before, in the past, way before COVID was even cooked up in that laboratory, or perhaps arose naturally, who knows. They will tell you that it's possible for people of many ages, any age, to get a post-viral fatigue or a long chronic fatigue problem. And any holistic therapist, really, any medical herbalist, nutritional therapist and so on, and some doctors that have a wider range of treatment than is generally available, will have experience treating chronic fatigue. So anyway, I'm going to talk about a bit of background about long COVID, a little few statistics and things, and then, what can you do about it, or what's the holistic perspective? So first of all, there's a category of people who are very likely to be ill for a long time after having COVID, and that's people that are in so badly ill with it that they're in a hospital in an ICU, intensive care unit. And it's just worth mentioning that in fact very many people end up with a long-term problems from being in ICUs from any cause. 60% of people that are in an ICU for any cause whatsoever are still poorly a year later. They still have things like cognitive impairment a year later. And in fact, 1 in 10, at least 1 in 10 people that have been in an ICU suffer from post-traumatic stress. So that's got nothing to do with COVID itself as a virus, or what that virus, how that virus might affect the body. So just worth pointing that out. But of course, there's lots of people that haven't gone to hospital and still are suffering from symptoms long after. So how many people are there actually? I mean, it's very interesting because you can find studies that go, as if it's really almost everybody that's ill long time later, but actually quite a good observational study of over 4,000 cases. That's when I say cases, I don't mean somebody with a positive test, PCR test. I mean somebody who's actually ill with COVID. So these people were really looked at how many still had symptoms after a month, 2 months and 3 months. And whilst, and the symptoms that they looked at were fatigue, headache, shortness of breath and loss of smell and taste and so on. So I'm going to tell you, right, 13% of people were still poorly and 1 month after. So that's quite a lot. It's a nasty, if you're ill with it, some people don't get any symptoms, right? That's because their immune system is so robust, or just has recognised it somehow, it's similar enough to something they've had before, that they've just shrugged it off. Some people, even with repeated exposure to it, never even develop any antibodies to it. That must be people that have got a very robust what's it called, non-specific immunity. I think I've talked about that in other videos. But anyway, Other people, it gets into the blood, they make antibodies, but they never even had a single symptom. But so of people who are symptomatic, you know, people can have anything from something very mild to something quite serious. But of those people, 13% of them will still have some symptoms a month later. But after 2 months, it's only 4.5% of people that still have some symptoms. And after 3 months, it's 2.35%. So you can see that if you put that on a graph, that's a declining curve, and that's how it carries on. So it's just worth remembering that for people with long COVID and worried about long COVID, that actually time is a great healer. And of course, as we always say in any kind of holistic approach to medicine talks about, the fundamental thing that we're interested in is how can we encourage and promote the body's own natural healing mechanisms, because of course we've got loads of them, because without them we couldn't get better from anything. No matter, even if the most high-tech, wonderful modern medicine has saved your life, it's really what it's done is enabled your own innate healing mechanisms to operate, because without that there is no getting better at all. So let me see. Yeah, I want to say as well, in that study, very interestingly, what they found is that the very highest risk of having these long-term symptoms the very highest risk factor was age. So people over 70, 75, more likely to have it quite considerably. The next highest risk factor was having a very serious illness, very serious initial bout. And then the next risk factor was actually having a high body mass, being overweight, basically. The more overweight you were, the more at risk you are of having long COVID. So it's just worth mentioning that. And that's not to say, I'm not saying that to fat shame anyone. I'm saying it because it really needs to be. We've had a lot of fear mongering about. To me, it often looks on the mainstream that there's just a lot of fear-mongering and not enough stuff about what you can actually do to increase your chances of doing well, increase your immunity, increase your chances of fighting off COVID or not being too ill when you get it, and recovering well. So that's what my Being Human is all about, this channel's all about. So yeah, lose weight. And the best way you can do that actually really is to tackle your sugar intake. For most people, almost everybody actually, if they stopped eating sugar, they will lose weight. I was going to say quite quickly, but if you've been overweight for a very long time, it can take quite a long time for that to kick in. But I'm not talking about starving yourself. I'm talking about eat plenty of nice food, good quality, what everyone should be doing, which is minimize preserved foods, eat mostly plants, good quality protein, and not too much. Don't eat too much. So in fact, too much, there's a kind of a rule of thumb. If you make your hands into a bowl and you see what fits inside of there, that's a good portion for your meal, apparently. Yeah, you can try it. I mean, of course, it means we're going to be hungry. And of course, the lockdowns meant loads and loads of people have been bored and frightened, overeating from boredom or fear or stress or isolation or loneliness, etc. And so loads of people put weight on. In fact, there's a massive study that's been done in England of over 6 million people, an observational study that absolutely found a correlation as soon as you weigh anything from, I think it was a body mass index of 23 which is actually the lower end of healthy weight. Not being underweight, you're frail and then you're ill too. But if you're even in the higher end of what's considered a healthy weight, your chance of having serious illness or having a proper illness from COVID increased. And that went up and up and up and up. So basically, you really need to get to grips with it. The obesity scourge, that we've got. And it's very, very difficult. It's very easy for all of us to do that, especially because basically what's easy? Junk food. So, if you stop eating junk food and sugar, basically you'll lose weight. It's really simple. And apologies to anyone that has really struggles with weight. I know it's difficult. And most of us have got some kind of addiction or habit or something that's impairing our health that we're not able to shift. But it still needs to be said that from what you can do, if you're really afraid, of COVID, that's the best thing you can do actually to improve your chances. So the other thing about sugar, of course, is that it has an immediate suppression of your immune system, immediate suppression of your immunoglobulins, of your that automatic immunity that basically keeps anything that's bad out. That immediately gets dropped down when you eat sugar, and for several hours afterwards it has that effect. So if you're worried about COVID and you want to improve your immunity, sugar's your one to try and stop. So there's a great film called That Sugar Film, which I really suggest. Just look for it. It's a lovely Australian young guy that has made this film. That Sugar Film it's called. You'll find it easily. Have a look and watch it. It might inspire you. So there's two distinct groups in the study I'm talking about showed with the long COVID. One group of people have mainly fatigue, headache and shortness of breath, but the other have those things and multi-system effects, which include also still having fever and gastrointestinal disturbances. So I'm going to say, like, the more complicated your thing is, the more important it is that you try and get some advice and help from a qualified holistic healthcare professional, a medical herbalist, a nutritional therapist, homeopath, acupuncturist, and so on. And if you're really skint and you can't afford one, or there isn't one in your area, just try and find people like me. There's quite a lot of people like me that will do even just one session with you online to go through what you might be able to try and do, like your own regime that you can try and do to just to improve things, what the best supplements are, what the best herbs are, and so on for you specifically. So, okay, what can you do about it? I've already said the diet, the sugar, and you're really, that's the most important thing, because you're cleaning up your basic foundation for health. And if you've got other the other thing to do is to look at what other health issues you might have. This also all applies to prevention of COVID and long COVID, as well as treatment. But if you've got underlying other things, they're being called comorbidities. This is why older people are more at risk, actually, because older people usually have, or often have in our world, something else going on. So cardiovascular problem, a heart problem, a circulation problem, or lung problem, particularly being involved in difficulties with COVID. So you could, again, herbal medicine. I can't emphasize this enough. It's brilliant. Herbs really work. They're very, very powerful. Find a herbalist, find the information, try it. If you're doing it by yourself and you find some information online and then you go and buy some herbs from a supermarket or something and they don't work, don't just think, oh, herbal medicine doesn't work, because a medical herbalist will treat you quite differently, very, very individually, and also the dose and the quality of their medicines will be better. And in fact, I'm going to say, if you're treating yourself, you're probably better off, as long as you can find a good quality supplier. Just get the herbs, the dried herbs, the whole herbs themselves, and make yourself teas and decoctions. Boil them up, cook them up, drink them. That's often better than buying a tablet, which, especially a cheap one. If you buy a cheap tablet, often they're not very good quality. There's not actually very much in there. So anyway, take advice and use the herbs. You'll be great. You can always get my book, Deeply Holistic, Guide to Intuitive Self-Care, which will also guide you through, if you've got a particular problem with one of your body systems, it will guide you to how to, pinpoint particular things that you can do to look after yourself and improve your health in that area. Okay. And I'm going to say this as well, right? Most people I'd love to hear from anyone that wants to tell me, no, that's not true. I'd love to hear that. But for me, all the people that I've helped who've got long COVID, everyone, when you take a case history, you can find the roots of that illness. Very often there's overwork and stress in the past. It might not be horrible overwork. Sometimes it is horrible overwork, but sometimes it's just overwork at something that people loved, but they did it too much. Not enough, too much working, too much caffeine to keep going, not enough rest, not enough sleep. And as I'm always banging on about, the only way your body can ever heal from anything is when you're relaxed, when the parasympathetic nervous system is turned on. So it doesn't matter how much you love your job and how exciting and wonderful it is, if you're always operating from a place of excitement, then you're always a little bit in the sympathetic nervous system and you're not giving your body a chance to repair and recover. So often other flags, like often people that I've seen have had quite a long history of little flags saying, oh, you need to change something, and then bam, COVID. Even a mild case, bam, then they've got the long COVID and they're poorly. And they're forced to stop, basically, forced. Worth just saying that study that I've been talking about, which I'll write the reference below this, They also found that apart from women of the age of 50 to 60 have quite a high incidence of long COVID than men of that age. I think that must be related to menopause because, and there could be lots of reasons why menopause would, make you more vulnerable to something. But one of them is that your resilience to estrogen gives you a certain resilience, a certain protection from stress. So when you haven't got it, all the things you maybe have managed to avoid and ignore before, you can't anymore, basically. And I also think there's a factor because one of the things in fatigue and long COVID is to do with the adrenal glands being tired. So in menopause, the ovaries stop making estrogen and your adrenal glands, the adrenal cortex makes androgens, which then your muscle and fat cells can convert into estrogen, and that can help protect you and keep you well after menopause. So if you've had long-term stress, your adrenal glands are a bit tired, they're not quite able, and then an extra demand is put on them by the menopause. So because now they're also, going to be your backup estrogen. Anyway, so menopause, it also needs to be, if there's issues with menopause, fear not. Brilliant and easy and lovely to treat menopause as a herb. Any medical herbalist will tell you they've had a lot of success treating menopause. So you don't need, it's not just HRT or nothing. If you don't want to take artificial chemicals, if you don't want to be a lifelong supporter of a massive pharmaceutical company, then go and see your herbalist instead. Yes. Okay, so what else? Here's some other things to do. First of all, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, rest. Resting. I was absolutely, it drove me bloody bonkers when Boris Johnson had COVID and was like, don't worry everybody, I'm ill, but I'm still running the country. It's like, for crying out loud, can't you give a proper example to people? If you're ill with an acute viral infection of any kind, actually, but certainly one that we don't really know much about yet, rest, for crying out loud. Fresh air, yeah, have the windows open. If you've got a garden, be in the garden, but rest. Do not carry on working regardless, and act as if that's a blooming virtue, because that is a big way that lots of people get longer term problems from illness. So don't overdo it, don't work, take the time off and rest. And if you don't know how to rest, which is true for lots of us in the modern fast-paced culture, then you need to learn. I've got other videos about that. I'll put some links down there. Okay, high dose. If you're worried about COVID, and all of us should have a concern unless you're really young and well, then I would have been doing this anyway. High dose vitamin C, zinc and D3 supplementation, good quality supplements. If you don't know what are good quality ones, you can message me, private message me, or email via my website pipwaller.co.uk, and I'll help you out finding good quality ones. Right, the next thing is sort out your gut flora. If you don't have a healthy biome, your immune system's considerably impaired. Most of us don't have a healthy gut flora. And in fact, there is research that shows that long COVID is often related to people with a very messed up biome, a very bad, an unhealthy garden in the gut. Again, I've got other videos about that. So you might need things to kill off. You might have overgrowths of bacteria or candida in there. Overgrowths of bacteria, you can kill them with herbs containing berberine, with herbs like uva ursi and oregano. You can also sort out your candida with herbs like pau d'arco or with caprylic acid and undecyclinic acid, which is from castor oil. So I don't know, I mean, I'm not really sure much about castor oil, but I bet castor oil itself is good. And so you kill off the baddies and then you get the goodies back in. So you need your fermented foods. I personally really find kefir great, but it might be just that it fits my particular genetic makeup. So, and if I think kefir, the thing about kefir is if you can get a nice culture, you can make your own and it's cheap. It's really cheap. So I can tolerate milk okay. With kefir, milk itself I'm not good at, but with kefir I seem to be fine with that. And of course, all you need to do then is buy the milk and you've got your culture. And I've got one that I've kept going for years. And in fact, not if you're out of the UK, but if you're in the UK and you're having trouble getting a good a culture of kefir, milk-based culture, I can send you some of mine in a little pot if you message me, and we'll discuss that. Otherwise, any other fermented foods that you find helpful, But I really think if you've got big problems, you do need supplementation. And there's quite a range of different probiotics that are specifically good for younger people, for older people, for women over a certain age, and in fact for people where it seems like Candida is one of the problems. Okay, herbs, then you must get on your herb tea. And these are herbs that are good if you take them when you're actually poorly with COVID, or if you think you might be getting poorly, you can have them in the cupboard and start taking them. Nettle and dandelion herb tea. Nettle, stinging nettle leaf, and dandelion leaf, and I think yarrow as well is just brilliant. Now, if you've got a long COVID where there's still a fever, or to take if you've actually got COVID or in the active phase of it, if you can get hold of Artemisia annua, sweetworm would then do. And anyone that's got a garden or a community garden project or a farm or anything that's into growing, why don't you grow some? Grow some sweet annie. It grows fine, doesn't mind our climate. Chinese herb. It's sometimes called Chinese wormwood, but it's very tolerant to a lot of different climates, so you'll be able to grow it. Okay, depending then on where you live, on the climate, and on your other existing health problems and the other kind of symptoms you've got, you might need a whole load of other things. So if you've got shortness of breath or lung impairment, personally, my favourites include elecampane, mullein, and I like Marubium vulgare, which is black horehound. I love that one. It creates more, it's white horehound. It creates more, when you've got like a thick, sticky mucus that won't really come out, you know that you need to sort of clean out the lungs a bit, then it creates more of that. Anyway, there's tons of others. I'm not going to talk about them all, but if you've got a lot of fatigue and there's probably impaired adrenal thing going on, then licorice, blackcurrant buds, borage. If you're chronically susceptible to infection, or again in the active phase of treating COVID, you might want to try elderberries, echinacea, and also a really good herb called Scutellaria bicalensis. It's a type of skullcap, but it's not the European skullcap. Baikal skullcap, sometimes it's called. Oh, then if you've got menopause, a whole long list of herbs, including, Agnus castus, lady's mantle, black cohosh, motherwort, rose, wild yam, red clover. Too many to mention. What you need to do is you need to go and see a medical herbalist, get a consultation, so that you get something designed that's very specific for you. Okay, and then there's a whole load of other supplements that might be useful for you depending on your age and your other conditions. So you might be really well advised to take a very good multivitamin and mineral supplement. You might want something to support your mitochondria if there's a lot of fatigue, and that could be something like glutathione. You might have mast cell activation syndrome. That's very worth looking at. That's where you've got basically too much histamine, so you do a low histamine diet, and then supplements like quercetin can help. I'll do another video about that sometime. But basically, I'm going to say again, if you've got any possibility of doing it, have at least one consultation with someone that can steer you in the right direction. And then my final word, I know I've talked very fast because it's a long video, but I haven't made one for ages, so I hope this one's going to work out all right. So the final word, which is what I say about everything all the time, these are cofactors, to ill health of any kind, and they're two areas. One is your energy and the other is your emotions. So thinking about your energy or spiritual matters, I'm going to say get yourself cleaned up energetically. I think if you can get it, you get at least a few sessions with a plant spirit medicine healer. There's not very many of us, so you'll be lucky to get that, but try. If you can get it, then do. Otherwise, find a 5-element acupuncturist, because you might have a thing called aggressive energy. And there are other things, there are things we could talk about as outlaw conditions. So, but if you've got aggressive energy or another outlaw condition, basically nothing that you try is going to really work. It needs to be sorted out. It needs to be removed and sorted out. And it can create all kinds of illness. So definitely can be a cofactor. It's called aggressive energy. It's like a natural energy that's in the world. It's not an evil thing in itself, but if it gets into us, sometimes we can't fight it and it creates all kinds of disease. So it's aggressive towards us. Actually, if you've got aggressive energy, one thing that's really common with people that have got aggressive energy is that there will be a kind of real unease about knowing there's definitely something not right. Now, of course, that's complicated by the fact that we are living in this climate of horrendous fear where it's being whipped up all the time. This brings me to the emotional thing. We need to find ways of relaxing and being okay with life, you know, despite the huge amount of fear. I mean, you know, most of us are scared at the moment, right? People are scared of COVID itself, of getting ill, of being having long illness, of not recovering. People are scared of economic, you know, deprivation and disaster, very real, like really serious loss of livelihood that have come as a result of these lockdowns. Other people are scared of the repressive, what looks to many of us like a increasingly ramped up repressive state. And we're scared of the fact that there's so much division and increasing division in societies. People, you know, seem to be really vicious about each other's different opinions. We don't seem to be able to have just a conversation anymore. So where you might be afraid of people, you might be afraid of the vaccination, you know, and you don't want to have it, and you might be afraid. Some people are really afraid that there's going to be such serious problems from that vaccination that they're worried about everyone that's had it, you know. Anyway. You might be afraid that you can't get your treatment for your other medical problems because, well, in the UK at least, it seems to be almost impossible to get to the doctor at the moment for anything. So, yeah, fear. So, basically, just being alive goes with being afraid, doesn't it? So there's a lot of fears, small and big, daily, little fears, long-term, existential. And the only certainty, of course, fear of death, which of course we've all got. And the only certainty in any of our lives, ironically, is that we are going to die. Death is the end result of life for everyone, and we don't know when or how. And that, it's a scary thing. So how do we deal with this? We need to find healthy ways to deal with it. And the main thing is to try and be in your heart more. Bring the attention down from this thing up here, the mind, which just is so... it loves to sort of dwell in the past and rake over things, and it loves to worry about the future and think about what's going to happen there. But if we can open up all our senses, what are we seeing? What are we smelling? What are we actually experiencing and feeling? Even our emotions, what are we feeling in our body at the moment? If we can open up all our senses and be in the present moment, then we come down, we bring our attention into our heart, and we're more present. And in the present, actually, there isn't that much fear, usually, depending on what's going on, of course, you know, but much less in the present. So good luck, everybody, and enjoy your life. You know, it's a roller coaster, and there is only one thing at the end of the roller coaster you're going to get off, and we don't know what's going to happen then. But here we are together. We're in it together. So let's stay together in love and harmony as much as we can, whilst disagreeing, whilst being able to disagree. So I'm Pip Waller. This is Being Human, and this was about long COVID and other things. Thanks for listening.